Behind the Times. On this week's podcast, we're going to talk about a couple of things. My name's Will.
My name's Josh.
My name's Sean.
And first of all, Josh is going to talk about Oxfam.
Yeah, so it's been in the news quite a lot over the last week or so. The allegations that Oxfam staff have been committing sexual assault in Haiti. And I am concerned the response is disproportionate to what has been allegedly committed in Oxfam. So if it's okay, I'm just going to run through the allegations quickly. The Times has alleged that Oxfam staff in Haiti used prostitutes who may have been underage. Oxfam investigated this in 2011. 4 staff members were sacked and 3 resigned. Claims of underage girls being used were declared unproven. So reports of an investigation were published at the time. And I didn't know this was reported in the press.
No, I didn't see it.
So a report was published on the BBC and in newspapers that Oxfam had fired staff in Haiti for sexual misconduct. So I just want to throw that out there. That's
I didn't know that.
We can look back at that.
How long ago was that, sorry?
So that was in 2011, after the earthquake in 2010. The Charity Commission admits that it's aware, and I've got the exact quote here from the Charity Commission because I think it's worth reading. So this is recently, the Charity Commission said, in August 2011, Oxfam made a report to the Commission about an ongoing internal investigation into allegations of misconduct by staff members involved in their Haiti program. It explained that the misconduct related to inappropriate sexual behaviour, bullying, harassment and the intimidation of staff. The report to us stated there had been no allegations or evidence of any abuse of beneficiaries. So that was at the time. And I'm kind of worried that what the story is about now, and I realise that we're 3 men. What are we outraged about now? Are we outraged about the cover-up? Because it seems like there wasn't a cover-up, or certainly not a big cover-up. Or are we concerned about the crimes, the use of prostitutes? In which case, I'm not sure that staff using prostitutes is worthy of this much controversy. In large parts of Europe, prostitution is legal. It's clearly an abuse of a position of authority, but 7,000 people have cancelled their regular donations to Oxfam. The CEO has been called up to Parliament, and this doesn't compare to stuff that's happened in other organisations. The Church of England, Bishop Peter Ball, the Church of England's own report said that the failure to pass 6 of the letters to police must give rise to a perception of deliberate concealment. I don't remember bishops leaving the Church of England. The Catholic Church, Vatican official, stated that we know that in the last 50 years, somewhere between 1.5% and 5% of the Catholic clergy has been involved in sexual abuse cases. This is a more severe crime than using prostitutes, but we're not seeing the same reaction against these organisations. The President's Club, there's no ramifications for that. Nobody who attended is being driven out of their jobs in the private sector. And yet we know that prostitution was happening at that event. So I'm worrying that we're persecuting Oxfam, but we're not persecuting people who probably deserve it.
Why was it reported again in the Times recently, though? Why has it suddenly come up again? Has something new come out, or is it just they've sat on the story and they're just publishing it now for some reason?
I can't figure it out. The only thing that's new, as far as I can tell, is that there's the allegations of the prostitutes being underage.
Okay.
And so that wasn't disclosed at the time. But that allegation was unproven and Oxfam investigated. So we also need to bear in mind that publishing unproven allegations led to a Welsh Assembly member killing himself this year.
Yeah.
Or sorry, in the last few months. So there's a cost to doing this as well. And it just... I'm struggling to see that all of the attention that's been put on it is just... I don't know what justifies it.
It was reasonably high up within the structure of Oxfam. I don't know if he was an executive or something like that. But he was at Haiti and he was caught up in the allegations and he resigned and then got a job with another charitable organisation in Africa and was given a favourable reference.
Yeah, and he'd previously been in Chad, and there's been allegations about conduct in Chad as well. So I would agree to that, but I just, again...
But that could be a reason as to why this has cropped up again.
Yeah. So this Belgian. He's a Belgian guy, and his name
Yes.
is Van Hergesbergen
Yeah.
or something that I can't remember, and I didn't make a note of. So
Not
sorry,
racist.
sorry, Belgium. But he was named at the time. So I found the BBC report of this Oxfam report into misconduct in Haiti. He is named. So the fact that he resigned because of sexual misconduct is public record. So even that, I don't know where.
But that still doesn't make sense as to why he was given a favourable reference from Oxfam, because if he's resigned because of allegations of sexual misconduct, I mean, for one, you're assuming there was an investigation into his misconduct, not just that there was allegations. So if there was an investigation, where are the results of that investigation, and have they been published?
Yeah, so the full report hasn't been published. Oxfam have said that they're going to disclose it with the Haitian government, and it has now been published in a redacted form. But I think there's a bit of a problem with the timeline of this. So I think when you're saying about he got a favourable reference from Oxfam,
I thought it was. I thought that's what I've heard.
I think what happened is he worked for a previous company or charity called Merlin.
Right, okay.
And I think there were allegations there. Then he moved to Oxfam in Chad, and from Merlin got a favourable review. So I don't think it's Oxfam that's at fault with that.
Right, okay.
And of course, I don't want to say that Oxfam doesn't have a responsibility to the people of Haiti.
No.
Just that we need to be careful here. So the money that Oxfam gets from sort of foreign aid money is now on hold. And the people that suffer from that aren't the executives at Oxfam who will go and get other jobs in other big organisations. They are people who are impoverished around the world. And they are the people of Haiti as well. People of Haiti will suffer from these decisions. Only a few weeks ago, Oxfam was talking about how we had forgotten about Haiti and how the response in Haiti was there were too many small organisations that were too narrowly focused. The relief effort wasn't organised well enough. There was no umbrella governance. So Haiti is a prime example where we need Oxfams. If not Oxfam, then other organisations. And I just worry that this is an excuse to beat someone for the sake of it.
Are you saying it's worth, because of the good they're doing, it's worth what's gone on behind the scenes potentially because the good outweighs the bad?
Yeah.
And that's the situation, basically.
Yeah. It's difficult because I don't want to say that.
Yeah.
And I'm very close to saying that.
Well, everything at the moment is framed around sexual assault and, what's going on with the government. Like Damien Green resigned a couple of months ago because of something along those lines.
Looking at pornography, I think.
Yeah, but the whole frame of Harvey Weinstein, it's caused all this to explode.
It wasn't just looking at pornography with him, though, was
Wait,
it?
he
Was
lied.
lying about looking at pornography.
But he was on
thousands of times,
what's
or
the
at
date
least
today?
hundreds.
The 20th of February today. He was on the Today programme today. Again, not representing the government, but working for a think tank. And that was 2 months ago that happened. So it proves at that level, things can be forgotten.
Yeah.
Or, in reality, the people in them positions don't really care, but they have to act like they care, and then slowly they can come back in and get another jobs. And
You're right.
it's all a club, basically.
And this is why I worry, because we hit Oxfam, we say Oxfam's a bad organisation, the people involved with it are bad people, and to a certain extent that is true. The fact that you do good work in one area doesn't mean that you get carte blanche to do what you like in another. But what does worry me is that the way we react needs to bear in mind what Oxfam is, what it does. There was a really good person on Newsnight recently who was talking about this, and he was very critical of Oxfam, but he said if Oxfam didn't exist, we'd have to create it. And I think that kind of sums it up, is that if we destroy Oxfam, we're going to need to create a new Oxfam. And we should bear that in mind, that destroying it has a cost. And that cost, nobody will thank us in the long run for over punishing Oxfam and overhyping this story.
In one point I want to pick up on quickly was you said about staff using prostitutes. I mean, obviously the allegations about using underage prostitutes, no one's ever going to say that that's an okay thing. But the idea that prostitution, it's legal across most of Europe. Is it really that big of a thing? Well, I mean, isn't there an argument to be made there that these people that were being used as prostitutes really weren't doing it by choice? Their houses, their homes, their society has been completely destroyed. They don't have any other way of making any money. So, if anything, isn't that a bit of manipulation?
Yeah, it's exploitative behaviour. and it's not appropriate for anyone involved with an organisation like Oxfam to be doing. But again, this is all about proportionality. I don't think I want to say that using prostitutes is okay. I don't think I would go that far. But what I would say is that we need some proportionality in this. And this has all come about because there's been a growing sort of awareness campaign in the last few years, which has involved the rape of children, the rape of women, and some sort of young boys and men as well, in all sorts of institutions, from football clubs to religious organisations to the BBC to Hollywood. But what we also need to do is that sexual misconduct is not equal in all cases. And when we claim that it is, we are letting the most severe offenders get away, in a sense, by lumping, and this kind of goes beyond Oxfam, I guess, and I'd say that prostitution is not at this level, but by lumping a inappropriate comment in with forcing penetration on someone, what you do is you over-vilify at one end and you let somebody else get away scot-free, as it were. Harvey Weinstein is completely forgotten this week, and yet this is somebody who conspired to repeatedly rape people. And so, to me, he is worse than any of these people at Oxfam, as has been proven so far. In fact, as has been alleged so far.
But like I said before, Harvey Weinstein, everyone knew about him in them circles. It was commonly known what he was up to. Big movie stars supposedly knew about it. There's jokes made at award ceremonies about him.
Same with Kevin Spacey.
Well, that's it. People knew, but it's different. Maybe it's the whole thing about this, at this moment in time with social media, it's harder to get away with them things. This is why it's coming out a lot more now, because generations ago, you could do it and hide it.
Well, it was
now it's harder
institutionalised,
because there's
wasn't it?
more ways to get it out. Yeah.
But I mean, Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris. I mean, historical sex offenders have been named and shamed in recent years. So it's not just like that we can't get away with it. It's that we believe that when people say it, there's more accountability. Yeah. I think the police are better with it as well.
Well, now they are, yeah. But years ago, they wouldn't have done anything, I guess, would they? And this is the thing. These stories have been out there for years. People have gone to police, but they've probably gone nowhere. And this is why it's with social media, people are going on Twitter and getting campaigns and.
Well, it was only, I think it was it 1991 that rape within marriage was outlawed. So I mean, even in
I thought it was more recent, even. It could be.
It was the early 90s.
But you're right. It's disgustingly late.
Yeah, massively so.
What worries me specifically about the Oxfam thing again, though, is that there's a movement within certain parts of British politics, specifically UKIP and the Conservative Party, that want to abolish foreign aid. They've spent a decade bashing immigrants and accusing them of all sorts of crimes, from causing problems in the education to the NHS to all sorts of things. And what worries me is that we've now evolved from being hostile to immigrants in our own country, and the movement has become, let's cut foreign aid. And actually, I share some solidarity with the people in this country, but I also share solidarity with the people of the world. And if I'm paying taxes, then I want some of that tax money to go to benefit people in my country who are struggling, but around the world who are struggling. And Oxfam is a great mechanism for that. And I think the newspapers that are running on this, some of them have precedent for, stoking up these anti-foreign aid agendas. And there's another part of me that just thinks, well, look, let's just hold back. Let's not make any rash decisions. Maintain your direct debit to Oxfam for now, and let's just see what happens.
But also, to add on to that, the same newspapers also put forward a specific anti-immigration agenda. Yet there's an argument to be made about foreign aid being used which would actually limit immigration or emigration from these particular countries to your home country, because it's improving the living standards of them in their own country.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to tread too far down that route, but there's I would say that the arguments against immigration are irrational. The arguments against foreign aid are irrational. But by stoking up fear in this way and resentment, you kind of get the same effect. It doesn't matter if it's rational.
So in this part of the podcast, Sean's going to talk about universal basic income.
Okay, so give you a very, very brief bit of history about universal basic income. Credited to Thomas Paine in the 18th century, he argued for a basic payment to be given to all adults after, I think it was the age of 21, as a form of compensation. Moving on from that, in the 20th century, Dennis Milner, he argued for a state bonus because it would help to fight poverty. And now more recently, it's in the news because Nicola Sturgeon's announced in 2017 the beginning of experiments with universal basic income in areas such as Fife. And even more recently, in the beginning of this year, the Adam Smith Institute, a well-known right-wing think tank, argued that universal basic income is not only feasible, it's desirable, and it's also financially sustainable. For the arguments as to why there should be a universal basic income, that is a safety net for workers. Not only would it allow them to take the time to retrain if they're not happy in their current job, it could empower workers by giving them the ability to step back from a job if they're not happy with how they're working. There's been an argument that it would help people with their mental health because they wouldn't have to have the issues with worrying if they're ever going to make their payments to their mortgage or whatever. And also, it should greatly reduce bureaucracy by reducing benefits and making a far more streamlined system. And the main reason why it's in the news so much is because of the threat of automation. So with a lot of jobs now becoming automated, I mean, for one thing, you only need to look at the online grocery shopping that you can do now on like Ocado. For the majority of that, that's all done by machines. And then the only human interaction with the shopping is the delivery driver and the person who checks the bags at the end of the machine.
I'm surprised that they even check the bags.
Yeah, I know.
How many times does that go wrong?
Yeah. But then, of course, you've got, driverless cars that are going to be coming into play soon. You've also got Domino's announcing that by, I think, 2020, they're going to have a driverless delivery truck that just delivers pizza to your house, which...
Black Mirror.
Yeah, I wouldn't complain at that. Of course, I've got a couple of cons against it. It would be expensive, and also there's an argument about the incentives and handouts. So, handing out money to people won't give them an incentive to work.
I think that bit about people not wanting to work is people have worked and people have wanted to work. But the argument against it always is, people just get lazy and they'll sit at home and collect the money. But really, what I've read about it is that people do work, people want to work, and most people don't want to sit at home all day and do nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say from any of the examples that I've seen, mainly because, I mean, one example which is running at the moment is Finland. So they're doing an experiment at the moment with UBI, where they've paid, I think it's 2,000 people across Finland, so they're on unemployment benefit. They're getting €560 a month, and whether or not they get a job, they still get that benefit, and it doesn't get reduced. I think that's being trialled over a 2-year period. So €560 a month is not enough to live off in Finland. It's below what you'd call the living wage.
So there's currently universal basic income structures in places like Finland. There's not any trials that would allow you to subsist just on that income yet, are there?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right.
The one in Alaska, so that's been going for 50 odd years. That's to do with the state-owned oil company. It's almost like a sovereign wealth fund.
Right, so that would probably be more similar to things like Iceland, state-owned industries that provide money for the taxpayer. So
with Alaska, you have to have lived there for at least a year and plan to live there for many more years. And then you get a dividend at the end of the year. And I think the last payment was $1,900.
Okay.
So,
I really like this idea. I think it's great. And I'm a massive Thomas Paine fan, as you frequently...
Here we go.
Wet
dreams.
Just a warning now, Thomas Paine is going to come up a lot in these podcasts. So it's interesting there because there's two competing names for this. One is universal basic income, but the other one is a global resource dividend.
Okay, don't know about that one.
So the global resource dividend is probably a closer approximation to what Thomas Paine proposed, because it is based on this idea that property can only legitimately be the stuff that labour has created. So if I pick up a stick and I whittle it into a spoon, I own that spoon because I've put my labour into the wood. But you can't do that with things like oil or coal or steel or the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere or the water in the oceans. So the idea is that because those are things that are created without the application of labour, we all have an equal claim to them. And that's kind of Thomas Paine's argument. So I know that you've been looking at it from a kind of ends justification, but there is a very strong justification that this is how we should organise property. And then we fund the resource dividend from oil prices.
See, I don't disagree with that in the slightest, and I don't actually disagree with the idea of having a universal basic income. What I disagree with is the examples or the attempts that are being run at the moment, or for the ones that I've looked at anyway. So, for example, Finland, there isn't enough money to live off. So, in my argument would be to have a universal basic income, it should be the minimum required for you to live where you are. So it isn't really providing you the security that, in my mind, a universal basic income should.
Yes. This is good, because I think that example gets to the crux of our disagreement. Because you think that a universal basic income should reflect the subsistence wage that is needed in that society.
And I mean baseline subsistence. So you spend the money how you want to
So you're justifying on the cost of subsistence.
Yeah.
I would justify it the other way around. Okay. So one of the big resources that I think we should nationalise is land. And then we charge everyone that uses land rent. And that rent then is put into a pot, we divide it equally, and whatever that comes to, you get. That is the model that is advocated by Thomas Paine, by Henry George, by more recent people like Thomas Pogge and Philippe Van Paris, Hillel Steiner. But you're right, Ed Miliband, who was on Newsnight a few days ago talking about this and advocating it, was looking at it from this ends point of view. I think that's the wrong way to go about it. But I agree that we should implement it.
It's so politically sensitive that no one's willing to go all in on it. That's the problem. Like Finland, unless they've got a really big majority in government, will never go for it 100% unless something forces them into it. They're terrified. Like you talk about land, it's like impossible to do because so much wealth is invested in it, and so many people have money that is dedicated to land. Like I work for a developer, and they have so much land banked all over Greater Manchester, and it's worth millions and millions and millions, and they won't give it up without a fight. And that's the situation that we're in. And it's hard to get out of it unless something drastic happens.
You're right, there are a lot of vested interests. But I will maintain, I will fight the good fight, and I will advocate it to the hilt. But implementing it is going to be a difficult thing to do. And in a lot of ways, it is really counterintuitive. You're right, there is an argument. If you give people free money, they will do nothing. And it is quite hard to overcome that. And so we need to build up an evidence base. And I am prepared to work with the Ed Milibands and the Nicola Sturgeons. But this idea is receiving a hell of a lot of traction. And I don't know where it's coming from. It's disappointed me because I quite like going back to the 18th century texts and stuff. But
it's not coming from anywhere that can do something about it, though. That's the issue, isn't it? It's not coming from places...
Well, I disagree. Nicola Sturgeon.
How much power has she got? In reality, what can she really do?
Well, actually, no, because there's a good point about that, because she doesn't actually have control of budgeting for welfare. That's not devolved. Yeah. The money that she's used to put forward these experiments, I think, is £250,000 out of a separate budget.
200 what for the whole 250 for the scheme?
But the thing is, it's very small areas and it's very small, amounts of people in comparison to the rest of Scotland. It's not been rolled out across Scotland, just like the one in Finland. That's its small pockets and the selected people. So it's 2,000 people, I think, in Finland that they're doing it.
This is what I'm saying. It's not being given enough push for it to really work. It's like it's been set to fail.
You say that though, but that's not entirely true, because there's an experiment that's going on at the moment in the Netherlands. There's also one that's been pushed out in Ontario, Canada. They all differ slightly, but they aren't just small little private groups that are doing it. It's also being run out by governments.
There are NGOs that are advocating this. Henry George is another person who's really worth reading on this, actually. But Scotland is a great example because there's a quasi-governmental body in Scotland called something like the Land Reform Group or Land Reform Committee or something. And they are examining this, and they have been looking at land ownership as one of these things that could generate the fund for this income. And the legitimacy of owning land in certain ways, and looking back to people like Paine. And I even emailed them, actually, because I heard them on the radio. And occasionally, like Newsnight, this week, we decided to talk about this topic. And then Ed Miliband comes on and Newsnight and talks about it. So it's cropping up here and there. And It's one of these great ideas because it transcends left and right.
Yeah, it does.
We have certain socialist movements are advocating positions like it, and then we have people on the right. We have the Adam Smith Institute.
It's not just on the right; it's on the far right. It's a libertarian.
It's a libertarian idea, absolutely. So Hayek is quoted as endorsing this policy, and it's a bit of a kind of generous quotation, but it concurs with ideas that Hayek and Mises and these real hardcore neoliberals endorse because it supports the free market.
Well, exactly, because it reduces bureaucracy, getting rid of the majority of benefits, except for, I don't think anyone's actually come out as saying that they're against disability benefit, and that should be scrapped as well. But that's the interesting thing as well. So recently, the RSA, the Royal Society for Arts, Manufacturers and Commerce, they came out in the past few days to say, basically, they proposed for everybody in the country to get £10,000 each. They're arguing to go down Norway's route, developing a sovereign wealth fund. Do you know how much Norwegian sovereign wealth fund is worth?
Some of these oil-producing countries have got wealth funds that would blow your mind. And I think you're about to do this.
Over $1 trillion.
Yeah, see.
So at least they could fund a thing like this.
And
but has he got a country of like 5 million?
I don't know the exact figure.
It's a lot different from the UK.
Yeah.
Norway brings up as an example for the UK to follow, but it's a hell of a different country.
But and this is also the thing, actually, because from my point of view, what Norway is doing is illegitimate. Because it's private ownership in the sense that it is restricting the ownership of their supply of oil to people born in a particular corner of the globe. If we're really going to argue for a universal basic income, and if, as I would advocate, that we fund this through the sale of what should be commonly owned resources, minerals, land, oxygen, water, these things that are available to all of us, then it should be divvied up on a global scale. We have at our fingertips a means to eradicate poverty worldwide. We allow people to fence off land and drill for oil and reap the rewards. So Norway, far from being a good example of UBI, they're bloody bastards.
Norway's not I'm pretty sure they don't have a UBI policy or even an experiment. But I mean, I'll just talk briefly about Ontario and Canada. They don't talk about a universal basic income. What they're doing is called a guaranteed minimum income. It's slightly different, mainly because it's only targeted at people that are below their sort of...
That's it. Can I interview? Because this is a question I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
So there is such a thing as a negative income tax.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was trialled across America in the 70s, wasn't it?
Oh, was it? I wasn't aware of that. But so that's... Is that what they've got in Ontario?
No.
Okay. So a negative income tax system is that you say there's a £10,000 and anybody that earns less than £10,000, the government makes it up. So you know how the tax system now is like gradated. So between certain bands you pay...
Earn over a certain amount of
Yeah,
tax.
so once you hit the... whatever threshold is, you pay 40% tax and below that.
Yeah.
Well, basically, there's a bottom one, and it's if you earn less than that, then the government gives you money.
Okay.
So it kind of has the same effect as some UBI models, because the worst off get money from the government, but it's not means tested, and it's an alternative to UBI. So I was interested if
this is really, I mean, it's been reported on as being UBI, but it's not. For people that are out of work, they're trying to assess other things than they are in Finland. So in Finland, they're primarily looking at getting people who aren't in work into work. But in Canada, they have to be out of work. They get 75% of what they call the low income measure of that particular area, which is 50% of the median income for that area. So the most they can get is about just under 17,000 Canadian dollars per individual. And anything that they then earn, for every dollar that they earn, they lose 50 cents of the benefit. As soon as they start earning over $48,000, the benefit's removed.
That's a negative income system.
But
that's how a negative income tax works.
Right. The point I'm trying to make about that is one of the main benefits that I see from having UBI is reducing bureaucracy, reducing costs by removing however many state benefits and that kind of stuff. But this could be made so much easier. If it's the UK, if we're going to do £10,000 or however much, or £500 a month, send it to everybody. and then just get rid of job seekers allowance, get rid of whatever. But don't have it means tested. To me, that's just counterintuitive, because then at the end of the day, you're going to have some kind of bureaucracy to consistently means test things. Just...
Okay, what happens if the amount allocated through your system of UBI is insufficient because of external factors that are not your fault, such as having a disability?
There isn't a single UBI example which is saying getting rid of disability benefit.
But which means tests are you removing then?
As this one says, so is the one in Ontario, Canada. So it's assessing your income constantly to ensure that you're earning X amount, and as soon as you hit over a level, it's removing money. That kind of means testing.
Wouldn't that just happen like we have PAYE? So as you earn, tax is removed, and similarly, as you earn, money would be added. So automating that system, you wouldn't need a bureaucratic means assessment because your paycheck...
I suppose. No. I don't know. Does that just go through, some kind of computer system?
Yeah, it's a mathematical formula.
What happens with people who are higher earners? They get paid in different ways. So right now, instead of going to the top bracket, you end up getting your wage paid through a car allowance. You end up getting paid through gym vouchers, childcare vouchers. And with it means tested, that does happen even more. For people who say, well, I don't want to get paid 50 grand a year, because that's the cut-off. I'd rather get paid 49 grand a year, and I'll take a car allowance.
Which is another argument as to why means testing isn't going to work properly. It encourages people to hide their income. We're going to put your wage up, just do it in some other way. You put my wage up, that means I'm going to lose X amount of benefit. I'll just get it through, like you say, through a car allowance, something along those lines.
That's what happens. Instead of getting tied down in the figures, what do you think is the pros and cons for the social aspect of it? So, like, for example, families having more money to spend time together and raise kids that are better for society, or people can fund to go to university. What do you think of the pros of that? Or the cons, if you think there's cons?
Can I go first on this? Sure. I'm going to jump in front. I support UBI, but I don't give a fuck about any of these pros or cons, actually. Because the argument that I'm going to pursue for UBI is that I own the natural resources of this earth as much as everyone else, and anybody who says otherwise is stealing from me. And that should be the same for each one of us. We all own an equal share of the land on this earth, of the petrol on this earth, of the steel, and we should be claiming it as our property.
You are drifting a bit close to nationalisation there, mate.
Yeah, massively. The nationalisation of land.
You start singing Jamie Corbyn in a minute, eh? Oh, John McDonnell.
For the record, I'm not. But this is an entitlement-based system of ownership. It's coherent with people like Nozick, strong right-wing theories of ownership. But it's also compatible with elements of Marxism, the things that Bakunin said, these elements of the left, and it's that we should get UBI not because it is good for us, but because we are entitled to it. It is our birthright. And that, I think, differentiates me and Sean, and so I will maintain. I don't care what the pros are. I don't care what the cons are. We are entitled to it by virtue of existing at this time.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that in the slightest.
He does.
I really don't. That's the thing. I'd really like to, but I don't really think UBI is a positive thing. I just disagree with what is being done at the moment, or the examples which are being put forward, or the experiments, the trials, and that kind of thing. I disagree with how they're doing it, and how they're implementing it, and exactly what they're looking at in some cases. Again, I totally agree with the idea of it being a global thing. It should be a global thing. We are all inhabitants of this earth. What I wonder there is how would you even implement that? If you're talking a global thing, you need to be in contact with every citizen on this planet.
Oh yeah, so I mean,
it's a bit of a utopian vision, that, isn't it?
Oh well, utopia has negative connotations. I think it's further down the road.
Oh yeah,
you're right. It would need some supranational organisation, but what I will say is that we are progressing in that direction. There were kickbacks from Trump, from Brexit. These are the reassertion of national borders and national sovereignty. Protectionism. But this happens periodically. The world wars were blips in this. you could say the Cold War was a blip in this, but the relentless march of progress.
Blip.
Yeah, the blips. Yeah, the however many millions of deaths, the blips. But we are indisputably moving towards a world that has institutions like the EU, like the UN, and we're so Eurocentric as well when we think about this. The same is happening in the Gulf states, the same is happening in the Pacific region, the Pan-Asian region, across Africa, South America, North and Central America. The world is creating bigger blocks and they're overlapping, and global governance has grown and grown and grown. So we could say that, well, we need this world government, but it's happening, and the sooner the better.
Very good. I'm hoping that this dividing of the world into different sections isn't going to make another blip as you play it.
The Hunger Games. I just hope we're not in section 13.
But yeah, but I mean, just one quick note. There's actually there is one example of UBI which I'm actually okay with, and that's happening in Oakland, America. But it's
I've never heard of Oakland, so it must be a small scale.
California.
Oh, so what? This is a county, is it?
Yes, I think that's what you'd call them. But this is a private company, and they are giving a select group $1,000 each a month. They're testing a range of different things, but there is no incentive for the people that are involved in the study to do any of the questionnaires or any of the information that the company itself are trying to get from them. They don't have to participate in any of that. They'll still get $1,000 a month for however long the study is.
Who is running the study?
He's a Silicon Valley billionaire.
Probably Elon Musk.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It would surprise me.
They're called Y Connect.
Do these people think that they're in California, but they're actually on their way to Mars?
Yeah.
Because if it is that, then that's Musk.
Y Combinator Oakland. That's it. I just don't see any of the examples that we've got that are going on. I just don't think they're going to work.
On that positive note.
Yeah.
We've got about 10 minutes left now. For the last section, I want to throw a subject out that you haven't prepared for. Because obviously in the last week, there's been the shooting in America. I just wanted to get your both opinions. I know it's hard to condense it, maybe 5 minutes each, but just give a brief outline about what you think should happen, what you think will happen, and when's the next one going to happen, or will things change? You want to start, Josh? Just a quick one while we're talking about America.
Can I very briefly put this in a historical context?
Yeah, of course.
Because I don't think that we in Britain and Europe, we don't understand why America has guns. And it comes from this great movement in 1776 where the British were forced out for imposing taxes unfairly on the American people. No taxation without representation. It was the cry. America was forged through the armed uprising against an external power. And the right to bear arms is a hangover from that. The right to bear arms is not only a physical barrier between authoritarian government and the people, it's a symbolic gesture. And I think we lose the symbolism sometimes. So trying to explain the monarchy to Americans, it doesn't make any sense. But it makes sense in England because we understand the symbolic nature and we understand the history of it. So that does need to be said. However, the Fourth Amendment or whatever it is that says that the right to bear arms will not be infringed did not apply to fully automatic, high capacity magazine bearing weapons.
Yeah.
And I agree. Well, no, I don't agree. Sorry. I can understand why they want to hold on to this right to bear arms. But that does not explain why you should be able to buy over the counter without a background check. In fact, why you should be able to buy at all a magazine that holds 100 bullets. Because there is nothing in that speaks to the intentions of the Fourth Amendment in the same way that an American citizen shouldn't be able to have a fucking nuclear ICBM in their backyard under the Fourth Amendment. I'm saying Fourth, I'm assuming it is Fourth. And so from that point of view, I think Trump might just redeem himself a bit on this. It looks like he's making the right noises to a certain extent. That means nothing, admittedly. But if Trump were to put some background checks in, that would change the whole perception of his presidency for me.
Well, when Trump came into power, gun sales went down, and a big company that sold guns had actually gone bankrupt. And when Obama was in power, the people purchased more guns because they're worried they're going to get taken away. And now a president comes in who's pro-gun, in brackets, even though he's not necessarily, but obviously he's Republican and he's sponsored by them. The gun sales, ironically, go down with a president like that. So it's better for gun companies to have someone like Obama who scares people and they end up buying more. That's what the economics of it is. That's why it's all for America, I guess.
That's a really good Freakonomics piece there.
Well, yeah. Sean, what do you think then? We've only got 5 minutes, so...
Yeah. I mean, it obviously coming from a British perspective, I totally agree. It's completely ridiculous that you can buy an automatic rifle in America, with a magazine that you can actually extend to hold more rounds than the magazine was originally supposed to have. One, just an interesting thing that I experienced when I was in Dallas, staying with a friend. I was speaking to his nephew, who just turned 18, and for his birthday, his parents bought him an AR-15, which is an automatic rifle, for his 18th birthday. Now, discussing this with him, with this young lad, he said he was really disappointed. And I said, what were you disappointed about? He said, well, I wanted a handgun, but you're not allowed to own a handgun until you're 21. I said, well, why is that? He said, well, you can conceal a handgun. You can't conceal an automatic rifle. To which I said, but you can kill a hell of a lot more people with an automatic rifle than you can do a handgun. And when I took this subject further with him, I said, why do you need it? He said, well, I keep it under my bed for protection. Protection from what? He said, well, protection from if my house gets broken into, it means I've got a gun there to protect me. I said, well, has your house ever been broken into before? Do you know people on your street that have been burgled? No. There is no reasoning there. All it is, maybe it's scare tactics from the media. Okay. It's ridiculous in my perspective, especially when it's a regular or semi-regular occurrence to have mass shootings in America, and particularly in schools.
When it's on the news, do you even think twice when you see it on the news?
I watch it and I'm attentive to it. Of course I am, because it's an awful thing to happen. But, the last major shooting in the UK was in 1996, the Dunblane shootings. And what happened after that? Anti-gun legislation. Again, a lot of people in America seem to believe that we cannot access guns in the UK. You can legally own a shotgun. I mean, you can't buy an automatic rifle and you can't buy handguns. You can own a hunting rifle, which has more than enough capability to kill someone. We still have that culture of hunting, which is so popular in America. We still do stuff like that, and we still do it with rifles. The idea that implementing legislation in America to completely remove guns, it's never going to work anyway. And I don't think that's ever actually somebody's point. I think that the argument is to get rid of the guns that can kill people en masse. And I think that's a very beneficial thing if it ever came into play.
This is something that continually bugs me, because it's not just actually about these American school shootings. But there are studies that show that every time a shooter like this is portrayed in the media and named, and their photograph is shown, that you spawn several copycats that do not get reported. And it's the same with terrorist incidents and with other violent crimes. There is a sequence of events, all of which led to this person doing it. And gun ownership is a very significant one. Trump has picked out mental health, which is, you could argue, is a contributory factor. Certainly better mental health provision would have restricted it. Better social care would have restricted it. This guy came from a really troubled background. Another thing that could restrict it is more responsible reporting. So not naming them, not showing their picture, because these shooters get idealized, and certain parts of the media and certain parts of the web especially.
Whenever something like this happens, and when it's a white person, there's been another school shooting. So if that was a Muslim man, like the most recent one, then it would be a terrorist incident. But at the end of the day, to me, it is still a terrorist act. The point of the reason why this person has gone out to kill people, is that he's gone out to kill people. He's gone out to inflict terror. That is terrorism. So why not acknowledge it as that? I mean, okay, there isn't the backing from a bigger group, but the most recent one, he wanted to, he had Nazi memorabilia. You know, he was a white supremacist. So is that not white supremacist terrorism?
Yeah, you're right. If a, for want of a better word, brown person committed a school shooting, if their internet history showed IS material, they would be an Islamic terrorist. Yeah. If a white person does it and they've got Nazi memorabilia, they're not a white supremacist. You're right, there is a bias in
the troubled, aren't they? Yeah.
That needs addressing.
You have been listening to Behind the Times with Will, Sean and me, Josh. Please join us next time for more, or catch us on Twitter at BehindTheTimes_. See you next time.